So
Great.
Everything will be available, so that's great.
Well, thanks for coming. I'm Tony McGovern, and I work with FI Consulting, and I have to say it's really exciting to be back. It's been a while, and I forgot how cold it is here. There's tons of snow, and everything's coming back to me real well. Today, I'm going to present on career opportunities at FI Consulting. FI Consulting is a management consulting firm that helps commercial and public sector financial institutions solve challenging problems that involves data, analytics, and technology. We have two core missions. FI tries to create value for clients. And we do that by solving challenging problems, and we try to continually look to add more value on top of that for our clients' organizations. And then we add value to ourselves, to the firm, to FI itself. We create value for our professionals by providing opportunities to develop, to grow, to continue learning, and do work that's important, which is to make a difference and be recognized for it. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about being recognized for doing our work, for doing important work. So we, broadly speaking, we offer 5 types of services. Analysis and research, financial modeling, we streamline data and we streamline business processes. We also develop custom applications and custom software. And our 5th area of service, broadly speaking, is management consulting. And I'll go through and identify and give examples of each of those in the types of projects that we're on currently. So one of our missions, of course, as I just mentioned, is to develop and to add value to ourselves, to FI consulting professionals. And I'll just quickly go through this, but basically there are sort of 3 pillars by which we try to do this, and we call them opportunities, guidance, and training. And again, I'll go through these more in detail later and give examples that help illuminate what I mean by this. But in terms of opportunities, at FI, it's pretty terrific that when you come into a project, you're going to get client interaction almost right away. You're going to be part of a team, a small team that helps develop solutions, technical, complex problems that we're going to help solve for these financial institutions. We're going to be managing deliverables. Your manager doesn't only manage, you manage as well. And we execute tasks. We have another pillar of guidance that helps us with our own continual growth, project expectations, continuous feedback, semi-annual reviews, and coaching. And I'll talk more about that at the end, about this semi-annual review that we have. But I think it's a great feature at FI, where every semi-annual period, you start over again and build anew and try to continually grow and do good work and be recognized for it, and then have continuous feedback and coaching on top with it. And finally, training. We have internal training, modules, project experience that helps us grow, and the resources are there through the coaching, through other FI staff, through internal training and modules, and the expectations are there to help us grow. The FI standards. We have high quality standards that we must meet, and that is a motivator and a driver for us to continually grow and get better. So note about our clients. Generally speaking, we serve, these are all financial institutions, and they cross 3 sectors. Government, like Treasury, OPIC, USDA. We also work with commercial clients like Capital One, Wells Fargo is in there. And loosely speaking, public-private partnerships like Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. But what you see there are these financial institutions that we have engaged with or are currently engaged with. So I'm going to give 3 sample projects, examples of our project scope, and give examples of what we do, try to talk through it, and it'll give you a sense as to what we do with these clients. Federal Capital Partners, FCP. FCP is a private equity real estate investment company, has about $679 million in funds targeted to developing and building office, retail, and multifamily housing. And so what we've done is they've engaged us, and I'm sorry, they're based in the DC region, and they work all over the mid-Atlantic. And what FCP did is they engaged us, their asset management group, and asked us to help them with their processes, help them with their data import, with reporting, and build them eventually a tool that brings it all together. So their process for managing assets was labor intensive. It didn't allow for a big picture, holistic view of what it is that they were doing. It didn't lend itself to frequent and efficient reporting. They weren't able to forecast very well, and so they engaged us to come in, and we work closely with them to understand their main points and design them a custom solution that leveraged their existing infrastructure and allowed them to have timely, accurate reporting tools and help them, and we help them develop models used for forecasting. So the scope. The data that came in for FCP was in different forms. They had Excel files, they had PDFs. It was time-consuming, labor-intensive to get all these files, to get the data, to cull the data that they needed from these files. And the data that they had was inconsistent. It's pretty tough to get data from all these Excel files and a PDF and try to get it in a consistent format. They had some reporting deficiencies, slow processes to get these reports out. They sort of reinvented the wheel over and over again to try to get this data from these different formats. And they couldn't answer questions like, when is the right time to sell a property? Because their process is so labor intensive. The inputs and the formats had a disparate range, and it was very difficult for them to do what they needed to do. So our solution was, first, redesign their business process. We assisted them in developing what their business process should look like. B, we helped them with their multi-class data storage. So they have different asset types, and they require different data. So we help them make that data consistent and help them with the reporting on that data. Our application focused on analytical tools and forecasting. And so we built them a tool that allows users to perform asset management functions. Does anybody have any questions so far on that project or anything I just said? The next two, I think, may be more exciting because they have policy implications. The next two projects are we engage with the U.S. Treasury. And this first one is the Troubled Asset Relief Program. And TARP, as it's called, as many of you know, is a program that was signed into law by Congress and the President that helped during the financial crisis, 2008, helped with capital infusions into the banks, into GM and the automotive industry, and helped with some mortgage lenders as well. TARP was a high-profile, highly visible program that we were very lucky to get in on the ground floor to help with financial modeling, to help with reporting. to help senior management make decisions based on our evaluations. And so TARP is administered by the Office of Financial Stability. Originally, they had over $700 billion in obligations. By the end of it, we're close to tapering off of the program, and it's closer to $425 billion. And what we did is we developed cost estimates, market valuations of these TARP investments. And again, these cut across financial institutions, capital injections into banks, helped GM and Ally in the automotive industry, and we also helped some mortgage players in that industry. These were highly visible results. They were asked, we needed to provide these in a highly compressed time frame. So basically, they needed evaluations, they needed them correct, and they needed them right away. And so our value add to that client was we provided an agile solution. Because TARP was such a new program, and OFS, Office of Financial Stability, was brand new, we needed to adjust with them as they matured and the project scope matured. So in other words, the program is brand new, the office is brand new, we got in on the ground floor. And whereas our scope, when we got in there, the project scope was narrow, as the program matured, as it became more highly visible and there were more political consideration and policy considerations, we grew with the project and the project grew and did other things. We implemented complex and auditable modeling processes. We built them financial models, very complex financial models. We documented these processes. We made sure that they were ready in time for audit delivery. We researched and provided justifications for evaluations and benchmarks. So with a highly visible program like TARP, you're going to get a lot of visibility, you're going to get a lot of congressional committees asking you for ad hoc valuations. They're asking you for different things at different time, and we were there to provide justification for those. We provided full transparency in the models and results, and as a result, we effected a clean and consistent audit opinion. Does anyone have any questions about TARP, Office of Financial Stability, and our work there? Who here has heard of TARP? So I don't think it goes to say that it was a highly visible and it was something that it was a very cool project.
So every month when we read the papers, the TARP now costs the taxpayer $500 billion, $600 billion, $200 billion. Those were our numbers.
Right.
For the most part. So that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Good experience.
It was, and we got in on the ground floor, and again, as the office matured and as people became to recognize, they wanted to recognize TARP more, we offered more, and our work within TARP expanded with it.
What kind of skills? What were people doing on those projects? What were people doing on the project? What were they like? How were they doing this work?
Right. So it's a good question. Generally, financial modeling. So you've got a whole bunch of financial instruments that we need to know the cost of it. So, the Treasury pumped in $425 billion into the financial sector, the automotive, the mortgage industries, and they needed to know monthly, quarterly, semi-annual basis, on a periodic basis, how much of those investments were. So we built these very complex financial models that allowed us, allowed the office, and allowed external stakeholders to understand, what is it that these financial institutions are doing with taxpayer money. Secondly, reporting. So we have all these financial instruments out there. The cost is important, but there are some scenarios that, say, Congressional Committee or OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, they want to know what happens if we sold this, we did this with these preferred equities, with these debt instruments. So a lot of reporting, a lot of ad hoc analysis. And finally, helping them build sort of an infrastructure. Again, their office is brand new. Everybody's feeling their way around it. We're there to help. We're there to help build out the processes for them, build out the infrastructure that they need so they can do this continuously and they can do this correctly.
Question?
So at the start of the financial modeling, and I know it's probably very complex, but could you give us a good idea of sort of like a big picture of what questions you start to ask these, these clients to try and figure out where that money is going and where they're seeing, the return on investment, essentially?
Yeah.
Tony, you want me to answer that? So I was probably closer to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So our job at TARP, there were different parts. The core of it was, so the federal government, and I don't know if you guys get into this level of detail, minutia at Maxwell, but they have all these rules around how they need to budget, how they need to account for what they do, and so forth. It's a pretty complex set of it. They have their own, basically, accounting and financial management rules. They need to understand when they buy $100 billion worth of preferred stock in General Motors, what do they book that at? Is it worth $100 billion? Is it going to cost them something because they're not going to repay? What's the effect of interest rate movements? So we help them value those instruments from the government's perspective. So the first most critical step, if anything, and this is applicable to any financial modeling scenario, is to understand the terms and conditions of the investment. So, and they're probably still out there, but if you go on the Office of Financial Stability website, they've got all the term sheets for the GM investment, for all this CPP, that's the bank investments, for everything else. So you can read the detailed legal terms and conditions of each of those investments and understand what the payment terms are, the prepayment considerations, the repayment penalties. You understand what note rates they're charging, the conversion, because the preferred shares go from paying a 5% yield to the government, and they kick into a 10% yield after a certain amount of time. It's supposed to incentivize them to repay. So reading those terms and conditions, step one. And step two is really, once you have a handle on those, start coding, really. So, and I think we built most of those models in SAS. Possibly we may have used like MATLAB because we need matrix functionality. But understand the terms and then build the models and test, retest, and then basically persuade everyone else that they work right. So the whole range of here are the results under one scenario, two scenarios, three scenarios. This is why we think we validated it, why the numbers make sense. And once the models are built, it's sort of an ongoing maintenance process to make sure that they stay updated and so forth. So term sheets is a short answer to that.
Good question.
I have a question off of that. So you talked about using SAS and MATLAB. Do you see your firm moving towards the open source big data tools like R or other large open source?
Yes.
Just because it seems to be the sort of the way everybody else is leaning. So.
Yes, albeit. We're in our business, and I think in any business, you want to sort of be a little bit ahead of your clients. Mm-hmm. You don't want to get too far ahead of your clients. I think things will get there in the space that we work. I think I haven't seen our clients for things that are like production systems, production processes, like run the models every month to generate cost estimates that are going to get booked in the financial statements. I don't see our clients moving to R or Python or anything else that's open source yet. They probably are going to be getting there. Once you pay for your SaaS license, then you've got it. And people are I don't know if SaaS probably still gives you guys free software. Universities probably get free SaaS software. So I think there's still SaaS is going to be around a while longer. But yeah, we are making sort of small investments in working with R in particular. And we're also looking at Hadoop and a bunch of other things. So, but it's not what I don't think they're been widely adopted yet. So,
just curious.
Yeah.
Thanks. Anyone else? And the last sample project that I'll talk about today is again with the U.S. Treasury, and this is in the Office of Financial Research. And this is also a new office created by Dodd-Frank, 2010. And basically, OFR has a mission to improve the quality, transparency, and accessibility of financial information and financial data. And so, again, we were fortunate enough, and we worked hard to get.
I'll just add, and the reason that they exist is, ostensibly, they serve the Financial Stability Oversight Council, and the FSOC exists because they think that the FSOC will be able to prevent the next financial crisis. So pretty audacious.
It's a big scope.
They've
got a big mandate.
Very worthy mission.
Yeah.
So the OFR, in order to support them, wants to get data about everything from everyone so that they can detect bubbles and so forth. So that's the idea.
Right. And again, we got in on the ground floor because this is a new office, and we've been able to, so we had a narrower project scope when we first got in. It surrounded chart validation. So OFR, they produce these reports, these annual reports. And within these reports, you'll have a slew, a variety of graphs and charts that are produced on, like Roman said, on everything, all financial. So you're talking about mutual funds, ETFs, you're talking about flow of funds data, you're talking about everything and everywhere data that has to do with the financial markets. And so OFR, they have within their confines, they have a sort of a small army of economists, and each economist is responsible for, say again, flow of funds data, mutual fund industry, and that's their bailiwick, and that's what they produce their data and their charts on. And so our scope when we got there was to validate these charts. So, and chart validation was, again, to get at the first mission, which is improve the quality of the financial data. Now, as you would imagine, this office with all these economists doing different things with the data, they're going to produce different charts. They're going to produce different work products. And so our second scope that we got into was to validate and produce a work stream around these charts. So essentially, we got in there and we built a business process around these economists getting charts that were more consistent, that were labeled correctly. So not only was the data accurate, but the presentation of that data was consistent, was rational, was reasonable, and efficient. And they loved our work on that. And before I go on, I'm sorry, that goes to their second mission of OFR, which is to improve the transparency of the financial data and information. And then finally, I think maybe Roman can speak more on this, but OFR really enjoyed the work we did, the chart validation, the tools we built, and the work streams, the processes we built around getting those charts correctly that they've asked us. Now they're formulating they're working into big data. So essentially, as Roman said, because they want to be, to look, to try to get all the financial information, that is a lot of information. And so you're starting to talk about big data, you're starting to talk about metadata, which is these sort of wrappers of information on units of data. And we're and correct me if I'm wrong, we're in the early stages of working with them, working with new technologies to try to help them figure out how to build out this infrastructure, how to make it work with this data much better. Is that something you would, do you want to add anything?
That's accurate.
So I think, someone mentioned big data here. Certainly, these, as Roman said, we want to get ahead of our clients, but not too much ahead. So we're working in tandem, to try to figure out what it is they're going to do, what technologies are they going to use, how are they going to get the data, how are they going to make sure the data is accurate. And so it really, from a policy standpoint, it really creates and affords us this really exciting opportunity to go somewhere that we haven't been before.
Obviously, the reason that this project is important is because we don't want the OFR to publish bad charts to
because they'll be very embarrassed, and Congress will be even more upset with them than they already are. And the reason that we helped them sort of figure out how to make their chart process better was because we were there on the 4th of July validating these charts at night, and it's, they've got things to do the next day, and they've got 12 people in there cranking out Excel charts, and every time they do it, something a little bit goes wrong, and the color's off or the line's wrong, and we have to keep validating it. So because we build applications, we said, why don't we just make this a push-button process for you guys? Which is what we did. Just, using very basic stuff like Excel Access. We eventually migrated to more powerful technology, but Excel Access, we probably took what used to take them 2 weeks of 6 people to do, and they can do it in a day with no errors. So big victory.
Big improvement.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions on that?
Yeah, do you see your firm moving more towards the public sector market? Is that, you did 2 projects here for public sector clients and one
Yeah.
for commercial. Did you guys start more commercial? Is that traditionally how you?
So Roman started it all, and that was at Freddie?
Yeah, our first client was Freddie Mac.
Right.
It was free, independent and free. We've actually, so we define our market as being, we work for financial institutions, but I'd say a large part of that for us has been federal, because there are a lot of, you saw USDA up there, if you saw it in the logo. So USDA actually has tens of billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars in outstanding loans and loan guarantees. The Small Business Administration, SBA, very similar. There's Veterans Affairs, similar. A lot of these agencies have some type of credit exposure. So they are who we focus on in the federal sector. So we've always actually, we've been about 50-50. That's probably where we are more or less today.
I was wondering if you could talk about the difference between your, public sector and private sector clients. Do you see, government agencies, the public sector being more behind? Do you think that, because, they, especially within the financial sector, they're colliding, so I was just wondering if there's a lot more work, do you have to go in from a different perspective when you're...
Well, first of all, we love all our clients. I would say that, one thing that I've seen is that almost independent of whether you're public sector or commercial, a lot of our clients have sort of big organization problems that just come with being a big organization, and so they're tend to be bureaucratic, and that might be a touch different and a touch worse in federal, but it's not night and day. It's not, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae are extremely bureaucratic as well, and so is Capital One. Are they further behind? I would say they're certainly not as leading edge in most ways as the commercial clients are. Because there's no profit motive. Yeah, exactly. There's no profit motive. So I think a lot of the reasons that there are very good government leaders and managers that we worked with that really want their agency to be better just because it's the right thing to do. But then, there's also a lot of inertia where why change if no one's telling you have to? Like there's no, and so when you're looking for consulting opportunities in the government, you're waiting for someone to tell somebody else that they need to change, like O&B, tell the agency that they need to change, and that there's probably work that's going to come out of that. But I would say along with the federal agencies being probably not quite as far down the maturity curve as our commercial clients, for us it can be really good because there's just so much more to do and there's so much further to go, so there are more opportunities. And it's not always easy to persuade people that they should go all the way with that kind of thing. But if you've worked at an institution like a Fannie Mae, and you look at the technology and the systems and the analytics and the portfolio management approaches that they have, and then you see where some of the federal agencies are, there's a huge gap. And part of our job, it's hard, very difficult to do, is to sort of try to persuade them to make up the gap. Sort of like, this is where you could be what about moving in that direction? And we have, we have the experience and the capabilities to help them do that.
So I've been on a project on and off at USDA for 3 years, and just to piggyback off of what Roman is saying, these 5 general areas that we serve: management consulting, application development, financial modeling, research, and streamlining business processes. I've been fortunate enough to do all of that, all 5 of those service areas at USDA. Because again, like Roman said, the incentives are not always aligned where they're going to be ahead of the curve. They're not going to change until someone tells them they should change. And we've garnered enough trust with our client that when we suggest changing a business process, or we suggest going a different way in terms of data, they're receptive to it. And so that's where the management consulting comes in. It's not just financial modeling. It's not just custom analytics. It's helping the client achieve greater success. And that's how I define management consulting is adding value to client in any way that you can. So why FI? I can tell you why I chose FI, and they're all spelled out right here. I think the biggest tenet of what makes FI stand out is this appeal, this notion of meritocracy. That is, if you come in and you work hard and you improve and you add value to yourself and to the client, you're going to succeed. You're going to do well. When you come in as a junior analyst, analyst 1, you're there in taking ownership of the project tasks. You're there managing different deliverables. So again, not just your manager is managing, but you're managing as well. We also promote from within, which speaks volumes to what we believe in our core values. Again, professional growth is another tenet, a big tenet of what we believe at FI. We have the opportunity to work directly with clients, face-to-face with, we're sitting at the table, the analysts on up are sitting at the table with senior management of some of these clients. Again, we can manage projects, we can manage our deliverables, and the training that we offer. Again, we have the resources, we have your colleagues, you have your managers, we have a coaching system, which is embedded within our continual development process. Those are all parts of this professional growth, and we take that seriously. And the work environment, we're 50 plus, we're growing, but it's still small enough where your work and what you bring to the table matters. You can't hide, you don't want to hide, you want to come in and do good work. And again, like I said in the beginning, come in, you do good work, you're going to be recognized for that work. Our projects tend to be very small, so 2 to 5 people, so it's a team focus as well. So if that appeals to you and it appeals to me, that's the kind of environment we work in. You take ownership, you work hard, you're in a small team environment, and you make a difference. And then we have firm-sponsored activities, which gives me a perfect opportunity to segue to the fact that we'll be at Varsity Pizza tonight at 7:30. We're going to be watching the game there, and please, you're welcome to join if you want. So why I'm here, why Roman and I are here, we are talking about employment opportunities. We are looking for talented people who want to be outstanding consultants and add value to clients and to FI. Here's some of the qualities for those who succeed at FI. You got to be smart, you got to be motivated, you got to be committed to identifying and executing on ways to add more value. Can't speak to enough about adding value. You got to come in and add value to the client. Every decision you make, is it adding value to the client? Is it adding value to the firm? Is it adding value to me? You got to be analytical, detail-oriented. You got to love working with data, quantitative data. You got to understand finance, and you got to understand programming, and or at the very least, be eager to learn programming very, very quickly and want to continue with that. Again, team-oriented. If you're working side by side with one or two other colleagues, you got to be in it for the team. And you got to be adaptable. Again, TARP and OFR, we got in there with a narrower scope, and we adapted with it. That office grew, both offices grew, their project scope grew, and we grew with it. And so if you're willing to adapt and willing to grow with it, to work from VBA, SQL, VBA and SQL to big data concepts, then this is the firm for you. And then you got to want to be able to contribute your ideas and your energy to making FI a better company. You've got a lot of energy. We've got a lot for you. This is where we are. We're in Arlington, Virginia. Please feel free to take a look at our website, take a look at our employment opportunities, and I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So anyone have any other questions? I know there's food upstairs
Yeah.
waiting for us.
In our office, like, because we couldn't have food down here, but we have some food up there, but they can come up and talk